Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller along with Sam Ekstrom here as we march toward training camp. We have full previews on the Purple Insider podcast and written work at purpleinsider.substack.com. Sam, we have to talk about the backup quarterback situation because on a daily basis, we're going to be taking videos. We're going to be charting throws. We are going to be watching with eagle eyes Kellen Mond versus Jake Browning versus Nate Stanley. And we have preseason games this year to analyze every throw in a game setting. It's exciting stuff, man. But if Kellen Mond does not win the backup job, we're on the same page here, right? That's bad for the Minnesota Vikings. So this is something that we're going to be watching closely.
Yeah, it's funny that we're this intrigued about a third-round pick and a UDFA and a seventh-round pick kind of all battling, but the fact that there's a discussion at all is different for the Vikings because they usually go in with a very clear hierarchy. They've got the starter, Kirk Cousins. They've got a veteran backup who's not threatening at all, and they've got a developmental quarterback who probably will never see the light of day. And this year, the fact that they have someone, in Browning who has been with the organization for 3 years and might make a case to be the backup, and Kellen Mond, the third-round pick. They never draft quarterbacks, and they drafted a quarterback. So that part is at least compelling. The fact that there are games is at least compelling. We just didn't see much from Kellen Mond in OTAs and minicamp. They gave him so few opportunities with even the third team. It felt like his reps were abbreviated. He was definitely at the bottom of the depth chart. We've never seen Nate Stanley in a game because they had no preseason games last year. So that's gonna all be new. We've seen very little of Jake Browning. So it's just kind of novelty across the board. Who is going to turn it on when the lights come on? And that part, I think, will be a good talker. And if Mond can't be the backup, then I think they're compelled to keep three quarterbacks, which is also a little strange.
We were talking about running backs the other day and how it was Amir Abdullah versus himself, that if he performs really well in training camp and ends up as the kick returner, then he could stay on this roster. And if he doesn't, then he won't. And with Kellen Mond, I also feel like it's kind of Kellen Mond versus himself less than it is versus Browning or versus Nate Stanley. Because if Kellen Mond performs well, if he masters the offense, if he feels like he's got command, if he can line up everybody and run the base plays, then he's going to be the backup because he's just a lot more talented than either of the other two quarterbacks. But if Kellen Mond cannot apply what he's learning, and he's supposedly very good with the X's and O's, but learning in the meetings out to the practice field, if he can't make the plays, if he can't make the throws, and he gets outperformed, I think what we've seen in the past is the Vikings will go with the guy that they trust regardless of where that guy was drafted. And if Kellen Mond is not able to play well against himself and master the offense by the end of the third preseason game, they will go with someone like Jake Browning, because even from the time that Jake Browning got here, he has done a good job and beat out Kyle Sloter for a position because he was just better at mastering the offense. And we saw that in minicamp and OTAs. Nate Stanley, like you said, we don't have a great feel for where he stands, but I think that Browning at least offers some competition to say you got to be on par with him in terms of how you have the offense mastered. And if you're not, then he's going to be the backup.
Yeah, I think we've seen in the past that, physical gifts are only going to get you so far. Kyle Sloter had good mobility, pretty effortless arm strength, and he just didn't really understand the playbook. He was not an X's and O's guy. Kellen Mond, also athletic. I'm not sure about the arm strength, but he does have sort of that compelling athleticism, but he does need to have command of the offense. And that's something that, Mike Zimmer values. He doesn't want an unpredictable quarterback back there. And if he can't count on them to make the safer throws, not put the ball in harm's way and not, get everyone lined up correctly, then he's not going to play. Now, does Jake Browning or Nate Stanley, for that matter, do they really have any claim to that number 2 spot based on their resumes? No. And I've said the same thing about the offensive line. I don't know if there's any amount of good that Rashad Hill or Dakota Dozier could do to prevent the rookies from passing them if the rookies played well. And I feel the same way about quarterback. If Kellen Mond earns it by playing well, then I think he gets it regardless of what Browning and Stanley accomplish themselves.
Now, I fully expect Kellen Mond to go from QB4 to QB2 by the end of the third preseason game. But let's say that he doesn't, Sam. What do you think the reaction will be if Jake Browning ends up as quarterback number 2? Because I can just envision frustration from the fans with Mike Zimmer if that ends up happening, because you're going with the less gifted guy, similarly to how they went with Sean Mannion, who I thought deserved a lot of respect and probably could have done better in games if he had ever gotten a chance to get in games that he could have operated their offense. We saw how well he could throw the ball in practice, but Kellen Mond is supposed to be a guy with a very high ceiling because of his arm and because of his athletic traits. To go with somebody who at very, very best is a backup in Jake Browning or Nate Stanley, I think there will be a lot of maybe irritation from fans, especially because on draft night, it felt like, oh, this could be possibly the down the road type of quarterback. If Kellen Mond is QB3, and I know it's early, and I know there's a lot of time for guys to develop, but it will feel like, oh, you spent a draft pick on a guy who's not even your backup.
And then it's a Jordan Love situation in Green Bay, because Jordan Love was not QB2 last year, and everybody just assumed that he was no good. And we don't know if that's true or not. We might be seeing him starting in Green Bay this year. But, you know, in Jake Browning's case, I think this only becomes an issue for the fans if, let's say, there's a meaningless game late in the season, for better or for worse. Either they've clinched it or there's nothing to play for, and the Vikings elected to play Browning for some reason over Mond. I mean, that's where it would get ridiculous. And I think alarming. It's okay if they want to give Mond a redshirt year, I guess. They don't expect him to play anyway. They expect Cousins to play all 17 games. If they want to, really kind of make him go through the turmoil of being a rookie and having to learn and having to toil underneath these guys, I guess that's their prerogative. I don't know if it's all out reason for panic. Some quarterbacks can be late bloomers. And from what we saw in OTAs, they are not fast tracking him by any means. They are slow playing it with Kellen Mond. So we'll see how it unfolds, but there's just so much that can happen over the course of training camp. I would expect to see him struggle at times, but then probably start to figure it out, in later August. So give him some time, show some patience with the third round pick.
And that's something that we're going to do, covering training camp out there at TCO Performance Center. So make sure you check out our work on the Purple Insider podcast and at purpleinsider.substack.com. We will catch you next time on Purple Insider Extra.